Sometimes true character isn't revealed by promises or praise. It's uncovered in moments of cruelty and humiliation. When Naomi Carter, the daughter of a powerful black CEO, disguises herself as a humble janitor to secretly test her employees' integrity, she never expected to face such ruthless humiliation. A pristine white porcelain cup filled with ice-cold water was poured mercilessly onto her head by a disrespectful man who believed he was untouchable. His cruel words and arrogant attitude spoke volumes of his true colors. But this man had no idea he had just insulted someone capable of changing his fate forever. What Naomi discovered shocked her and set into motion a powerful chain reaction of justice. In today's story, experience a dramatic tale where arrogance meets accountability, privilege collides with reality, and karma delivers a stunning verdict. Witness how dignity, pride, and integrity are ultimately redeemed. If you believe everyone deserves dignity and respect, don't forget to like, comment your thoughts, and share this powerful story to raise awareness. Sometimes a person's dignity isn't crushed by yelling or insults, but by a glass of cold water thrown straight into their pride. No one in that office, not a single soul, could forget what happened that evening. Ice-cold water, straight from a pristine white porcelain cup, poured down onto the head of a young woman bent over her janitor's cart. Her hair was soaked, her uniform clung tightly to her skin, water dripping onto the freshly cleaned tile floor. She stood frozen. The white man in a crisp dress shirt and gleaming leather shoes leaned down, voice low and threatening. "I told you already. Disobey me again and get out of here. Now clean it properly. This is what real work looks like." No one said a word. The room turned to stone. Some looked away. The rest kept their heads down. Though everyone knew it was wrong, no one dared to intervene. Who was she, after all? Just a nameless woman of color doing janitorial work. A lowly shadow in a tower of power. What they didn't know, what none of them could have imagined, was that the woman they had just humiliated? She held enough power in her hands to end everyone's careers in that room with a single snap of her fingers. 3 days earlier, in a luxurious glass house perched on a hilltop overlooking San Francisco, crystal chandeliers reflected on priceless art pieces. But no one in that house cared for any of the glamour. At the dining table in the center of the room, a conversation was taking place, one that would change the fate of an entire empire. Robert Williams, the legendary CEO of Williams Innovation, was now over 60, a man of color who built his fortune from nothing. His only daughter, Jasmine Williams Wakes, was a fixture on the covers of financial magazines with an impressive resume. Harvard graduate, Forbes 30 under 30, and currently serving as vice president of operations. He looked at her, eyes filled with pride and a deep, quiet worry. "Jasmine, you're brilliant, but not ready. You've never truly seen how this company operates from the ground floor. You've never lived like the people who scrub the floors, reset the boardrooms, and clean the bathrooms each night. You only know this company through polished report. But you don't know whether the values of respect and integrity I built it on are still alive." Jasmine froze. She had always believed she was ready to take over, but her father's words left her speechless. A minute passed. Then she lifted her head, eyes clear and steady. "Then, let me live like them. Let me work as a janitor in our own company. No name, no title, no power, so I can see for myself what's happening on the lowest floor of the building that bears your name." A few days later, a completely unfamiliar Janet appeared. Natural curls, uncombed, cheap sunglasses, a gray janitor uniform, worn-out shoes. Pinned to her chest, a name tag that read Janet Pro Clean Services. No one recognized her as Jasmine Williams, the young VP, daughter of the founder. No one asked her name. No one looked her in the eyes. She had officially become invisible inside the very company her father built with his blood, sweat, and tears. She started her shifts at 10 p.m. when the sharp suits left the building behind, leaving dirty floors, messy boardrooms, and reeking bathrooms. She had to learn how to hold a mop without straining her back, how to move without making a sound, and how to swallow her pride, endure the scornful looks and biting remarks. That first night ended with her shirt soaked in sweat, her hands red and raw from harsh cleaning chemicals. But Jasmine, or rather Janet, wasn't about to quit. Because she had begun to realize the truth. The very people keeping the company's reputation clean were being treated like trash. What she didn't yet know was that in just a few more nights, things would turn cruel. A man named Gerald would make her taste humiliation known as prejudice, and from there, a quiet revolution would begin. Jasmine, dressed in a dark janitor's uniform, was bent over scrubbing the hallway floor on the 38th floor, the level reserved exclusively for senior executives. Each stroke of the mop felt heavier, not just because of the physical exhaustion from nearly 3 continuous hours of work, but because of the disdainful glances she had endured all evening. No one knew who Janet really was. Not a single nod, not a single word of thanks. She had nearly vanished from everyone's view, like she was just another part of the floor she was cleaning. Until he appeared. Gerald Blake, head of operations. A man in his 40s, expensive leather shoes, neatly tied tie, and a gaze that constantly seemed to judge everyone from above. From the very first night, Jasmine had sensed something off about him. He didn't need to raise his voice. With just a single authoritative glance, Gerald could make the entire janitorial team shrink back, as if they didn't deserve to exist in the same space as him. That evening, Gerald walked up to her, scrutinizing every sweep of her mop. He stood less than a meter away, arms crossed, and said coldly, "You planning to clean that floor by pushing the mop like some old lady doing Tai Chi? And that sink over there, and look again, still water stains." Jasmine turned to look. The sink was spotless, not a single mark, but she didn't argue. As Janet, she wasn't allowed a voice. She bowed her head and responded softly, "I'm sorry. I'll clean it again." Gerald didn't reply. He walked off, but not before deliberately nudging her supply cart, causing a bottle of cleaning solution to spill onto the floor. "Looks like you'll be cleaning all night after all." The days that followed were a relentless string of cruel trials. She was forced to clean the same area over and over again for a single imaginary stain. Scolded in front of other employees, ordered to work overtime without extra pay. Gerald seemed to have a special kind of hatred for Janet, a young woman of color, newly hired, with no one to defend her, and no one who even noticed her presence. She remained silent, but she was remembering everything. On the 4th day, she was wiping down a glass wall in the hallway when she overheard Gerald speaking on the phone with someone outside the corridor. "I told you if the old CEO won't retire, we'll push him out with manipulated reports. I've got Derek and Karen in my pocket. We'll have control of the board soon enough." Jasmine froze. The old CEO he was referring to was her father, Robert Carter. So behind all that arrogance was a carefully calculated power grab. From that moment on, Jasmine knew. Her mission was no longer just a cultural investigation. This was now an internal espionage operation, and she could not afford to fail. While the hidden schemes were slowly surfacing, another truth began to cut even deeper. Even ordinary office employees, the same ones who used to smile at Jasmine when she walked by in a business suit, now seeing her as an anonymous janitor, casually walked past her, kicked her cleaning bucket, and even muttered things like, "These janitors never do their jobs right. Who keeps hiring such useless people?" Jasmine didn't just feel angry. She felt disillusioned. For years, she had believed that her company represented kindness and decency. But now, those values were being trampled by the very people entrusted with power. One night, as she was cleaning the conference room on the 40th floor, Derek, the marketing director, walked in, holding a cup of coffee. He looked at her, then tossed the paper cup right onto the freshly cleaned floor. "Clean that up. Oh, and next time, and make sure this place smells better. Still reeks of cheap chemicals." She bit her lip, cleaned again, stayed silent. Again. Each stroke of the mop was now an act of memory, etching into her mind the names. Gerald, Derek, Karen, Veronica, those who had smeared the reputation her father had spent 35 years building. And that was the moment a new decision stirred within her. I won't just observe. I won't just report. I will expose every single one of them before the entire board of directors. Every insult, every act of humiliation will be brought to light. Seventh night. The wind swept across the glass windows of the 40th floor of Williams Innovations, making them tremble faintly like stifled breaths. Inside, the soft amber light reflected on the spotless floor, where Jasmine Carter, was curled up behind her janitorial cart. But this time she wasn't alone. In her slightly trembling hand was a phone, voice recording mode activated. Beneath a folded cleaning cloth, a miniature spy camera was cleverly hidden in the glass cleaning tray. And on the hem of her uniform, a wireless mic linked to her smartwatch. She had turned her janitor's cart into a mobile surveillance hub. She didn't need to react anymore. No need to resist. All she needed to do was listen and record. Because when justice is weighed, evidence always speaks loudest. The masks began to fall. That evening, Derek, the suave, seemingly well-mannered marketing director, walked into his office just as Jasmine was wiping down the meeting table. He couldn't hide his irritation. Tossing his bag onto a chair, he snapped, "How many times do I have to say this? Use the sandalwood-scented cleaner for the table. Do you want our clients to smell cheap disinfectant?" Jasmine bowed her head, silent. The recorder was still running. Derek walked up, lightly swatted her hand away from the table. "People like you have no idea about brand image. You were born to scrub floors, not to think." She didn't respond, but the camera caught everything. As Jasmine walked out, she heard Derek making a phone call. "Yeah, don't worry, I've handled that. No need to raise janitorial wages. We'll funnel the funds through the events budget, split it 3 ways, just submit a fake report to HR, done." She stopped walking, didn't breathe. A soft click on her watch. Recording saved. The next day, a coldness that came from silence. Jasmine approached Karen Mitchell, the director of human resources, hoping she might be the one person who still had a shred of conscience. She calmly described how Gerald had poured water on her, publicly humiliated her in the hallway. She told it all without tears, without anger, only the truth. Karen listened with a sympathetic expression. Then slowly she spoke, each word like a needle. "I believe you may have misunderstood. Gerald has high standards, but he's a long-standing employee. And you're just a janitor. Everyone at this company has value, but not everyone's value is the same, is it?" That sentence, as light as a feather, struck Jasmine like a sledgehammer through bone. "We encourage our employees of color to strive harder, but they should also know their limits." Jasmine nodded, thanked her, and quietly left the room. But Karen had no idea the entire conversation from start to finish had been recorded in 4K by the hidden camera inside Jasmine's cap. The fateful encounter with Veronica Wells. The slap that sparked a reckoning. On the 13th night, Jasmine entered the 42nd floor conference room right on schedule for cleaning. But inside, Veronica Wells, vice president of business, was still in a meeting with her team. Jasmine politely said, "Excuse me, I can come back after." "Did you just interrupt a multi-million-dollar meeting to mop a floor?" Veronica snapped as she stepped forward. Jasmine stayed calm but didn't back down. "According to the department schedule, this is the allotted cleaning time. If there are changes, management should have notified us beforehand." Veronica paused. The room went silent. Perhaps it was the first time any of them had seen a janitor speak like a leader. And then, smack! A slap tore through the room. The sound of skin on skin echoed clearly, from 4 hidden cameras Jasmine had installed beforehand. She fell to the floor, hand on her cheek. But she didn't retaliate. She simply said, "Thank you, Ms. Wells. I'll never forget this night." But what Veronica, Gerald, Derek, and Karen didn't know The young woman in the janitor's uniform, the one they mocked, insulted, and mistreated for 2 whole weeks, was not just any employee. She was the legal heir to the entire corporation, and now Jasmine Carter had fully and meticulously recorded every word, gesture, and violation. The final night as a janitor wasn't to clean the floor, but to cleanse a system that had long rotted from within. 9 p.m. Sunday. Jasmine Carter, beneath the final layer of her disguise as Janet, stepped into the lobby of the 42nd floor. Her breathing was steady, her gaze no longer filled with the uncertainty of that first day. Tonight she didn't just carry a mop, she carried an indictment against those at the top of a heartless empire. On her body were ultra-miniature recording devices discreetly placed where no one could detect them. Inside the plastic basket hanging from her cleaning cart, a 256-gigabyte portable hard drive filled with videos, audio recordings, documents, and irrefutable evidence, enough to take down an entire executive board in less than 30 minutes. This would be the final shift of a janitor named Janet, and the awakening of an entire company named Williams Innovations. One last time she returned to the place that hurt her most. Tonight Jasmine volunteered to clean the executive boardroom, the site of the next morning's board meeting. The lights turned on. Her shadow stretched long beneath the cold glass walls. She wiped each corner of the table, placed every chair precisely as though preparing for a sacred ritual. As she was cleaning the window ledge, Gerald Blake appeared. "How many times do I have to say this? Don't be here when important meetings are about to take place. The way you clean, this company's about to turn into a garbage dump." Jasmine looked up at him, her eyes calm and strangely resolute. "Tomorrow morning is a very important day, isn't it, Mr. Blake?" "Humph. More than important. The former CEO and the board are meeting to discuss the company's future. Low-level staff like you wouldn't understand." She smiled, but said nothing more. Because she understood more than anyone. She was ready for the final move. After finishing her shift, Jasmine quietly returned to the break room on the 39th floor where she had stashed her tailored suit, glasses, and accessories for the next morning. She stood in front of the mirror, staring at herself. Janet, the woman who had been slapped, drenched, and humiliated, was about to disappear. On the table, a sharp navy blazer, gold-rimmed glasses, and a sleek black folder. But her greatest weapon wasn't the outfit or the heels. It was the truth. She took a deep breath. Tomorrow wasn't just a meeting. It would be a sentencing for arrogance, for discrimination, for the hypocrisy rooted deep in the company's leadership. A sleepless night. She called her father, Robert Carter, at 2 a.m. "Dad, are you still awake?" "Yes, I've been thinking about tomorrow's meeting. Are you sure you're ready?" "More sure than ever. I've seen enough, heard enough, and I know what I have to do. I'm proud of you, Jasmine. Make sure they're all in that room tomorrow, then I'll walk in." On the other end of the line, Robert said nothing more, but in the darkness his eyes shone with the same light he had once carried when he built this company from nothing. The dawn of truth, 6 a.m. Jasmine arrived early, in a polished CEO outfit, hair neatly tied back, red-soled heels clicking down the long corridor of the 42nd floor. A few security guards opened the doors and smiled in greeting, but none of them recognized her as the janitor Janet from the past 2 weeks. She stood in front of the boardroom and looked at the familiar faces. Gerald Blake holding his coffee as cold as ever. Karen Mitchell, HR, was already seated with her notebook open. Derek fixing his tie as if preparing to present something. Veronica Wells' face like stone. None of them knew that in just a few minutes they would come face to face with their conscience, through the very clips they had unknowingly created. A defining moment, and the dawn of a new generation of leadership. Jasmine walked in. No knock, no introduction. But every eye in the room turned to her. "Good morning, everyone. I'm here to clean up a few messes, not on the floor, but on this company's integrity. Not everyone is given power, but anyone can reveal the truth. 9:58 a.m. Executive Boardroom, 42nd floor. Headquarters of Williams Innovations. The atmosphere in the boardroom was frozen in suspense. Board members sat neatly around the gleaming walnut table, laptop screens glowing, eyes filled with curiosity. No one knew the true reason for the emergency meeting personally called by Robert Carter. In a corner of the room, a woman in a plain gray uniform was still cleaning the floor. A few executives glanced at her with irritation. "The meeting's starting." "Why isn't she done yet?" Gerald Blake scowled, pointing at the woman. "Still not finished? Get out of here now. This is a senior-level meeting. This room isn't for the cleaning staff." The ultimate unmasking. When Janet was no longer Janet, Jasmine stood up, not rushed, not afraid. She calmly removed her light gray janitor's uniform, revealing underneath a sleek black suit with the Williams Innovations logo pinned neatly placed over her heart. She pulled off her headscarf, revealing softly styled waves of hair. She stepped forward, each stride purposeful, each glance unwavering. The entire room went silent, frozen in shock. Veronica Wells was the first to gasp. "You're Jasmine Carter?" She nodded. "That's right, I'm Jasmine Carter, daughter of Robert Carter, and the newly appointed CEO of this company. For the past 3 weeks, I haven't been cleaning floors. I've been observing all of you from the lowest level of this organization." Shock spread like a tidal wave. Derek dropped his pen, his face pale as a ghost. Karen Mitchell forced an awkward smile, whispering, "That's impossible." Gerald jumped to his feet, stammering, No, it can't be you. You tricked us. This was a setup." But Jasmine remained composed. She picked up a small remote from the table and pressed a button. The main screen lit up. A video played, Gerald pouring a full cup of water over her head, under the hallway lights on the 38th floor. Crystal clear quality. Time-stamped. Location and audio are undeniable. "This isn't a story, this is proof." Next, footage of Derek forcing her to clean the spotless floor 3 times for quality control. Then came the audio recording of Karen, the head of HR, clearly saying, "You're just a janitor. No one here cares about people like you." And finally, Veronica Wells, her slap reverberating in the room, showed striking Jasmine in front of 6 employees. Her voice captured clearly, "Don't ever speak up in here, you're trash." Silence fell, like a confession without words. No one defended themselves, no one made excuses. The once proud faces now looked like mice cornered by a lion. Jasmine turned, facing the room. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word struck with precision. "I didn't do this for revenge. I did this so we could all look in the mirror. The company my father built on integrity is being corroded from within by people like you." She turned to Robert Carter, who had quietly observed the entire meeting, and he gave a slow, approving nod. "The decision. Justice doesn't need theatrics." Robert Carter stood and spoke, his voice firm. "Gerald Blake, Veronica Wells, Karen Mitchell, Derek Phillips, you are all hereby terminated for gross misconduct and violating the core values of Williams Innovations." Security entered, right on cue, polite yet firm as they escorted each person out of the room. No one resisted. They knew. Their reckoning had come. A new path, an old lesson. Jasmine turned to those who remained. "We won't change everything with just one meeting, but today is the beginning. I will rebuild this company on real values, on listening, on compassion." She bowed her head, not in apology, but in tribute to the silent workers who kept this company running every single day. Sometimes to stand tall at the highest peak, you must first have knelt at the lowest place. The afternoon after the explosive board meeting, on the rooftop of Williams Innovations headquarters, the place where Robert Carter often came to find peace and reflection. A soft breeze passed through the transparent glass walls, with the cityscape stretching endlessly beneath the late afternoon sun. Jasmine stood by the railing. Her eyes gazed far, where the sky melted into a shimmering horizon. Her suit was slightly wrinkled now, and the red mark on her cheek had faded, but her eyes had never looked so powerful. Behind her, familiar footsteps echoed. "Well, you did even better than I imagined." Robert's voice came warm and heavy with emotion. Jasmine turned around, offering a faint smile, a blend of pride and exhaustion. "You know, I almost couldn't take it," she said. "I almost stood up and screamed who I was when Veronica slapped me." Robert stepped closer, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "But you didn't, because you're a true leader. You understand that real strength lies in calm, not in titles. A conversation not about business, but about humanity." The father and daughter sat on a long bench gazing toward the horizon. Golden sunlight gleamed off Robert's graying hair and reflected in Jasmine's resolute eyes. "I know asking you to work as a janitor was harsh," Robert said slowly. "But if I had handed you the CEO title without letting you understand what it feels like at the bottom of this company, I would have sent you into battle unarmed." Jasmine nodded. She recalled each night of scrubbing floors until her hands bled, each insult, each contemptuous glance. Then she exhaled. "Now I understand. Leadership isn't just about strategy, contracts, or reading reports. It's about feeling things from the bottom up, listening to the voices no one wants to hear." Robert looked at her, eyes glistening with tears. "You've grown. Not because you're my daughter, but because you've learned to hurt with your people. A new beginning, not to rebuild power, but to do what's right." After the morning's board meeting, 4 senior executives were fired. The entire company's HR, supervisory, and operational systems entered a stage of transformation. But this time, Jasmine wasn't doing it alone. She launched a listening circle initiative with janitorial teams, security staff, front desk receptionists, technicians. She didn't approach them as CEO, but as someone who had once worked alongside them, who understood them. In those meetings, Jasmine didn't just take notes. She made real commitments. Created a frontline employee protection unit reporting directly to the executive board. Implemented anonymous feedback policies allowing any employee to report managers without fear of retaliation. Retrained all area supervisors on leadership ethics and humane workplace practices. And the greatest lesson was about people. 1 week after the shocking unmasking, Jasmine walked into HR to deliver a promotion letter to Darnell, the janitor who had quietly warned her about Gerald. He was now promoted to new hire training manager, responsible for guiding new employees on company culture, values, and behavior standards. "I never imagined this would happen," Darnell said as he held the letter. "I used to think I was just a shadow." Jasmine smiled. "It's people like you, the shadows, who are the true foundation of this company, and it's time the light reached every hidden corner." In the main lobby on the first floor, Jasmine hung a large plaque with the company's new commitment. "Every human being deserves respect, from the CEO to the person who sweeps the floors. Jasmine Carter, CEO. If you want to clean a building, start from the basement. If you want to save a company, start with what everyone chooses to ignore." Just 1 week after the historic board meeting, Jasmine Carter, now the newly appointed CEO, had already launched a sweeping corporate reform. But not everyone welcomed her with applause the way they did when she revealed her true identity. There were eyes following her, not with admiration, but with unease and even quiet resentment. The silent winter inside the ivory tower. Not everyone was ready to let go. Though the 4 executives had been fired, their allies, those who had once benefited from the toxic culture, still lingered in scattered corners of the organization. They didn't openly oppose Jasmine, but they sabotaged from the shadows. Decisions were deliberately misinterpreted, stalling reform efforts. Some department heads whispered to junior staff, "This is just a publicity stunt." A few middle managers deliberately distanced themselves, refusing to attend Jasmine's labor-focused meetings. Many thought, "She's young, her passion will soon be crushed by reality." But Jasmine wasn't easily shaken. She didn't choose confrontation. She didn't issue mass demotions. She chose transparency, publicly announcing every reform step with a clear roadmap. Instead of orders, Jasmine used truth. Instead of threats, she appealed to people's sense of dignity. The regeneration plan from root to crown renamed the Human Resources Department, now called People and Culture Department. People aren't just resources, they are the foundation, Jasmine declared. When you dare to speak the truth, some will hate you, some will avoid you. But hundreds will silently thank you because finally someone spoke up for them. Culture Day. A morning no one saw coming that day. Employees from every department, from security guards to engineers, from secretaries to vice presidents, were all asked to attend a special event. Corporate Culture Day. A week prior, everyone thought it would be a dry, traditional event with a few speeches and a light lunch. No one expected that morning to shake the very foundation of the company. Jasmine took the stage, but this time no elegant blazer. She wore the very same janitor's uniform that so many had once looked down on. The entire auditorium fell silent. Jasmine held the microphone, eyes scanning the crowd, then began. I've stood on many grand stages, signed multi-million-dollar deals with international corporations. But today I'm not here as a CEO. I'm here as someone who once cleaned this company's toilets at 3 a.m. and was called useless. A wave of murmurs spread, quickly silenced by her next words. How many of you have ever apologized for a mistake that wasn't yours just because the other person had a title? No one answered, but many eyes dropped. Very many. A film shone under the noon sun, but colder than snow. Jasmine played the first clip. Gerald Hayes dumping a cup of cold water over her, then walking away in silence. She stood there, soaked, quietly picking up the mop. Justice is never late. It simply waits for the right moment, and the right person to speak up. An afternoon no one expected. 4 emails from HR. That very afternoon, while the echoes of Culture Day had yet to settle, 4 envelopes bearing the Williams Innovations Confidential logo were neatly placed on the desks of Gerald, Karen, Derek, and Veronica. They didn't need to open them to know. This was the end. Immediate termination on grounds of abuse of power, professional misconduct, and severe damage to corporate culture. What stunned them even more was the final paragraph of the email. Based on the evidence collected, the company has transferred all violation records to federal investigative authorities regarding acts of embezzlement, internal fraud, and collusive unfair competition. The law will take it from here. Karen broke down in a private meeting. She had always seemed so composed, but when Jasmine entered the room at the end of the hallway where Karen still sat trembling before her laptop, the woman suddenly burst into tears. I didn't know you were Robert's daughter. I had no idea. Jasmine stood tall, her eyes devoid of any hint of sympathy. If I weren't his daughter, would I have deserved a little more respect? Karen bowed her head. The answer didn't need to be spoken. Jasmine placed a USB on the table containing the recording of their HR office conversation. I'm not going to deal with you out of hatred, but through the very rules you once used to cover for wrongdoing. And remember this. The moment you treat people like garbage, someone eventually will come along to pick them up and clean out the rotten system you helped build. A call from someone no one remembered until now. At 8:30 p.m. that night, the desk phone in Jasmine's office rang. The screen displayed, Alvin Price, San Diego. She hesitated. Alvin was once the deputy director of engineering at the company, a mechanical genius forced out 7 years ago for not fitting the culture. She picked up. Jasmine? Yes, this is she. I watched the whole event replay. I cried, but I also saw hope. Are you ready to hear an investment offer like no other? Alvin Price, from castaway to biotech magnate. After being pushed out of Williams Innovations, Alvin founded his biotech firm, now valued at over $900 million. He had once promised, if Jasmine ever stood up to fix the broken system, he'd be the first to return. And he kept his word. I want to invest $50 million into your corporate culture reformation project. Not because you're Jasmine, but because you're the first person I've seen. Stand in front of a silent crowd and say, we were wrong. Jasmine's voice quivered. I'm not sure I'm good enough to do what you're saying. No one is good enough, Jasmine. But as long as you don't back down, people will walk beside you. A letter printed and posted throughout headquarters. The next day, a simple letter appeared on every bulletin board, in every meeting room, every hallway. No signature, no logo, just a message. If you're reading this, you might be someone who has silently endured, or someone who once helped maintain the silence. Today, justice has been made clear, and from today forward, this company belongs to those brave enough to choose what's right. Someone who was once considered no one. You don't need to wear a suit to be a leader. Sometimes you just need to be willing to kneel, to truly understand who's carrying the weight of the entire system. An unusual morning, the beginning of the end. Tuesday morning, the Williams Innovations building lit up earlier than usual. But this time, the first to arrive wasn't a director nor a department head. It was Jasmine Williams in her familiar janitor uniform, mop in hand. She entered the maintenance room where the cleaning crew usually gathered before their shifts. Everyone froze in disbelief. Darnell, the seasoned co-worker who once told her to stay away from Gerald, stammered, You came back? But you don't have to." Jasmine smiled and held out her arms as if to embrace the whole room. "I came back to say 2 words. Thank you. Honoring the invisible for the first time in 35 years. That very day, an unexpected event was organized. A ceremony to honor the company's entire maintenance and support team. Jasmine stood on stage and for the first time publicly shared her undercover journey. The time Gerald poured water on her, the time Derek humiliated her, the time Veronica slapped her, and how HR chose silence. The room held its breath. Then, hundreds of people stood and applauded. Ms. Betty, a 62-year-old janitor with silver hair, choked back tears. "I never thought I'd hear my name in a company meeting, let alone be hugged by the CEO in front of everyone." A history-making announcement, one that shook an entire industry. After the longest standing ovation in the company's history, Jasmine stepped up to the podium. "I'm announcing 3 changes effective immediately. All frontline support staff, from janitors and security guards to drivers, will now become full-time employees with complete benefits including health insurance, training, and career development plans. The 1 day at the bottom program, all mid and senior level executives must work a frontline role at least 1 day per quarter. An independent corporate culture oversight unit to be established under the direct supervision of the CEO, bypassing the traditional HR chain." The hall fell silent. Then it exploded in applause, tears, and relieved, radiant smiles. A final letter from Robert Williams, the man who dreamed it all into being. A week later, Jasmine shared a handwritten letter from her father, Robert Williams, now officially retired. "My daughter, you are not only worthy of being CEO, you are worthy of rebuilding everything from the inside out. You didn't choose power to enforce change. You chose labor to understand and transform, and that is what makes a truly great leader. With all my pride, Dad." An ending and a beginning. The building was once infamous for being efficiently managed but heartless, was now celebrated by Harvard Business Review as a symbol of corporate cultural renewal through courage and compassion. Jasmine, once the girl in a janitor's uniform, now the youngest CEO of a $5 billion enterprise, stepped out of the 42nd floor elevator and paused before a newly mounted plaque in the lobby. A company is only great when no one is treated as invisible. What do you think of Jasmine's journey? If you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or like a nobody, so today, know that you are not alone. Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to hit follow for more powerful, real-life inspired stories just like this one.